Okay, we have three different types of costs that go into our manufacturing: direct materials and direct labor. And those are pretty easy to figure out because those are direct. We can directly put them in. Overhead is going to be the problem. Overhead, by definition, is indirect. So because that is not direct, it's much more difficult to put it into, to figure out what the total costs are going to be because of it. They cannot be directly tied to it. For instance, a janitor is very difficult to directly tie to any given product. So because they're not direct, we have to come up with a different way of assigning the costs. One of the things we like to use are estimates. We use the estimate of our overhead, and we use that usually at the beginning of the year, and we use that to figure out a predetermined rate. In other words, how much are we going to actually apply to our production based on our estimate. Traditional costing used only one driver, direct labor. So traditional costing only used direct labor. Activity-based costing, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, you can use almost anything for driving the cost. It could be direct labor, it could be machine hours, setups, anything. Whatever it takes to drive that cost. Okay, turn to page 1 of the handout. If you didn't get it in class, you can also download it off of Blackboard. But turn to page 1, and you should have something that looks like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the traditional approach, which is just direct labor hours. And we're going to use that to apply the overhead. So we have $800,000 of our estimated overhead. We're going to divide that by the direct labor hours. And that is going to give us a predetermined overhead rate of $80 per direct labor hour. Okay, so now we're going to apply our overhead using our predetermined rate. We're using 9,500 actual direct labor hours times the $80 per hour to give us the amount of overhead we're going to apply to whatever the production is. So we come up with $760,000 that will be applied to the overhead. And again, we can't directly tie it to the overhead because it can't be directly tied. It's not a direct cost. So we have to find some rate to apply it at. Okay, for C, it says what if we have actual cost of $752,000? So we applied $760,000. The actual was only $752,000. So we actually over-applied. We applied more than we actually had. So we're going to have we over-applied 8,000 here. Okay, page 2. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out page 2. It's similar to page 1. A little bit more stuff on it, but pause the video and then see if you can figure it out. Okay. Page 2. We have our estimated overhead and our estimated direct labor hours. So just like on page 1, we're going to find our overhead applied. And again, for direct materials and direct labor, you usually don't have to do this. You might have standard costs for those. But for overhead, it's a must. You have to find some way to apply it because they cannot be directly tied. So we're going to take the $100,000 divided by 8,000 hours. We come up with $12.50 per direct labor hour. Let's head on over to B. It says calculate the overhead applied if 8,400 actual direct labor hours are used. So we're simply going to take the 8,400 hours times our predetermined rate of $12.50. So we are going to apply $105,000 to our overhead. Okay, so our total down here, we're going to have direct materials, 380,000. We're going to have a direct labor total of 202,000. And we're going to have our applied overhead of 105,000. And if we put those all together, add them all up, we come up with 687,000. So 687,000 would be the total cost that we would have for our production. Okay, turn to page 3 if you would. On page 3, we're going to start activity-based costing. That is where we have more than one driver usually. So the drivers could be anything. They don't necessarily have to be just direct labor hours. And the idea is you want to usually tie those costs to whatever is driving those costs. So for instance, the first one we have are the setups. And the setups we have are 300,000. And what we're going to do is take that 300,000 and divide it by the number of setups. In other words, direct labor hours aren't really driving the cost of the setups. The setups are. So we're going to divide it by the number of setups we have, and hopefully that'll give us a more accurate picture of what's actually happening in our production. that the setups are actually driving the cost. So we're going to get a total of $2,000 per setup. So each setup costs us $2,000. Do the same thing for supervision. Now you'll notice that we're using direct labor hours for supervision. We're not saying we can't use direct labor hours. In some cases they're appropriate. In this case, supervision. But they may not be appropriate for everything. So we're going to take the 100,000 divided by 4,000 direct labor hours, and we'll come up with $25 per direct labor hour. Let's circle these so we keep them separated here. All right, we're going to do the same thing for the shipping. 140,000, and the shipping is the driver is for the orders. So the more orders we get, the more shipping costs we're going to have. So divide the 140,000 by the 3,500 estimated orders, and we come up with it's $40 per order. All right, let's take a look at B here. Now for B, let's calculate the following totals. Okay, so we have three different areas that we're applying these overhead for. So what we're going to do is, for each of those different areas, we're going to multiply them by the predetermined rates for those areas. So the setups, as you recall, are $2,000 a piece. So let's multiply that by 145. A total of 290,000. Same thing for direct labor hours. Each one of those we determined to be $25 per hour. So $102,500 will be applied for that based on the predetermined rate. And same thing for the orders. $3,300 times $40 per order, so $132,000. And if we add all three of those up, this will be our total overhead applied. So $524,500 will be the total amount, just adding all three of those up. So the overhead we applied would be $524,500. And again, you'll notice that we're not just using direct labor hours, we're using whatever is appropriate for the cost. Okay, pause the video and see if you can work page 4, and the solution will be coming up in a minute here. So go ahead and pause it, see if you can work page 4, and then check your answer with the solution here. Okay, page 4. 800,000 of overhead for design divided by 160 setups. So we're going to have $5,000 per setup. Machining, we had $150,000 worth of machining that we're estimating, going to be the overhead. And we're estimating 5,000 machine hours, so we can figure out how much it is per machine hour. So we come up with a rate of $30 per machine hour. Same thing for supervision. Take the estimated overhead amount, divide it by, in this case, it's direct labor costs, so these are in dollars also. So 330,000 divided by 1,100,000 equals 0.3 or 30 cents per direct labor dollar. So every dollar we have of direct labor, we're going to charge 30 cents for supervision. Okay, let's take a look at B. So B, similar to what we had for page 3, we're just going to multiply these out. So 125 setups times $5,000 per setup, and we come up with a total of $625,000. It's $30 an hour. $141,000 and 1,200,000 times 30 cents. So it's 30 cents per dollar of actual direct labor costs. So $360,000 will be applied. Total them all up. $1,126,000 total will be applied. Okay, let's go to page 5. On page 5, it's similar to what we just did. We're going to do the same thing as far as finding out the predetermined overhead rates. You guys are kind of seeing the whole the way this kind of goes. First determine the rate, then calculate how much it's going to apply. So material handling, we're going to have $700,000 divided by 10,000 requisitions. Requisitions are just when someone requisitions materials, in other words, they're asking for materials. It's just the amount of materials that could come into a place. Okay, for assembly, we might have some overhead, and we're going to split that up based on direct labor hours. Again, we're not saying that you can't use direct labor hours. Sometimes they're appropriate to use them, so we're just saying we don't use them for everything. So $2.40 per direct labor hour. I'm just abbreviate here to save room. So $2.40 per direct labor hour. And inspection, 35,000 divided by 700 inspections. That's our estimate for the number of inspections and cost. All right, so we're going to have a total of $50 per inspection. I shouldn't say total. That's per inspection. We're going to have $50 per inspection. So what we're saying is every inspection is going to cost us around $50. That's what's driving the cost of them, of the inspections. All right, well, let's go to B. Now, you know something on B, we have two different products. So it's going to be important for us to know how much to apply to each product. So we're going to use our predetermined rates to apply these to each one. So our requisitions at $70 each for product A, we get 3,100. So we're going to apply 217,000. Direct labor hours times $2.40. So 30,000. And each one's going to have $2.40 applied. $72,000. And then lastly, the inspections cost us $50 each. So 100 times the $50 each, the inspections are going to cost us $5,000. Add all three of those up. The 217,000 plus the 72,000 plus the 5,000, we come up with 294,000 is going to be applied to product A. And we're going to do the same thing for product B. So 7,000 requisitions at $70 a piece. 490,000. Direct labor hours at $2.40 each. $43,200. The last one, $650. times $50 each. $32,500 applied for the inspections for product B. And just like for product A, we're going to add them all up. $490,000 plus the $43,200 plus the $32,500 I'll add all those up. You come with $565,700. So for B, the total will be $565,700. Okay, pause the video and see if you can work page 6. The solutions of page 6 will be up next. Okay, page 6. Starts out exactly the same routine as before. 450,000 divided by 18,000, we come up with $25 per machine hour. Packaging. And that the driver for that's going to be orders. The more orders we get, the more packaging we have to do. So packaging will be $50 per order. And for supervision, we have $340,000 divided by 17,000 direct labor hours. And we're going to get $20 per direct labor hours. So $20 per direct labor hour. Okay, so we're going to take those and apply all three of these to our two products. We're going to have product A and product B. So 8,500 times 25. $212,500. And each order is going to cost us $50. So we're going to have a total of $100,000. And our actual direct labor hours are 11,000 for product A times 20. Total them all up. 212,500 plus 100,000 plus the 220,000. We will have a grand total of 532,500. So that's how much is going to get applied to product A. Same thing for product B. $225,000, 9,000 times the $25 per machine hour. We have orders of 700 times the $50 per order. 35,000. And 6,200 times $20. $124,000 is applied for our actual direct labor hours of 6,200. Add all three of those up, 225,000 plus the 35,000 plus the 124,000, and we get a total of $384,000. Okay, turn to page 7 if you would. On page 7 we're going to do something a little bit different. And that sometimes we'll use the actual results or even estimates of the two different products. And the thing you have to do here is we have to combine them. So in this case, the actual results, we have actual requisitions for product A and product B. Actual labor hours for product A and product B, and our actual orders for product A and product B. So we're simply adding those together to get the totals, and that's what we're going to use for our rates to apply it. So we have the results for product A and product B, and we give the total hours, total requisitions, total labor hours, and total orders. So those are what we're going to use to split up that overhead. Okay, so let's take a look here. So we're going to take our ordering divided by the total of 3,000. Per requisition. Requisition again is just a formal way of asking for inventory. You requisition something means you're asking for it, basically. So our supervising, we have 600,000 divided by 20,000 labor hours. So we get a rate of $30 per labor hour. Do the same thing for the packaging. And again, we're using the totals here for both product A and product B for the drivers. So $125,000, I'm sorry, $125 per order. So each order and packaging is going to cost us $125. So we just come down here, and now we're going to use, for product A, the requisitions, the labor hours, and the orders, and multiply them by our rates. So 2,000 times 40 is going to give us 80,000. $15,000 times 30. 450,000. And 800 times $125. This is 100,000. So our total is going to be $630,000. Just adding all those up. Do the same thing for product B. Product B, we had 1,000 requisitions times 40, 40,000. $5,000 times 30, 150,000. And 1,200 times 125 equals 150,000. Add all of them up. So 40,000 plus the 150,000 plus the 150,000 gives us a total of 340,000. So product A would have 630,000 applied. Product B would have 340,000 applied. Okay, pause the video and see if you can work page 8. The solution will be up momentarily. Okay, page 8, same thing, same routine. We have the results. We're going to add both the Department 1 and 2 together. So machine hours, 30,000, labor hours, 20,000, orders, 5,000. So those are the numbers we're going to use to split up our overhead costs. 300,000 divided by 30,000 machine hours, $10 per machine hour. So we had $100,000 of cost supervising divided by 20,000 labor hours. So it's going to be $5 per hour. And the shipping, we had 150,000 divided by 5,000 orders total, so it's going to be $30 per order. And I just come down here to the bottom and figure out how much goes to each department. So Department 1 had 24,000 machine hours, 5,000 labor hours, and 3,000 orders. Just multiply them out by the rates. So I'm just going to add all of them up. 240,000 plus the 25,000 plus the 90,000. Altogether, we're going to come up with 355,000 for our product. Scratch that. Department 1. It's going to get 355,000 of overhead applied to it. Department 2. 6,000 machine hours, 15,000 labor hours, and 2,000 orders. Again, we just multiply by the rates. $10 per machine hour, $5 per labor hour, and $30 per order. 60,000. We're going to add them all up. 60,000 plus the 75,000 plus the 60,000 equals 195,000. Okay, and that is the end of the handout. So hopefully it makes sense.